Hi everyone, I'm here with Rashid Smits, who is our Director of International Accounts for Randstad Sourceright, and we're here for an exciting episode of Talent Trailblazer TV, which is all around the contingent talent space and how MSP is developing in the market today. So I'm going to start off with Rashid. Rashid, do you want to share a little bit of your background with me?
Yeah, sure. And thanks for the introduction. So yeah, as you said, Rashid Smits, currently the Director of International Accounts, responsible for all international accounts, headquartered in EMEA, global accounts. Before that, I was the Client Service Director for the Philips program for quite a few years. And before that, I was actually one of the project managers in Lorna's team. So around 7 years now with the company.
And Rashid, I guess the contingent workforce space is a really evolving space as many organisations are looking to increase headcount that they employ on a contract basis, as well as looking at how they can really approach freelancers, the SOW space and more. So I'm excited to start the interview with you. So let's start with your first question. Yeah. So Richard, tell me, how has talent scarcity globally really affected the use of contingent talent?
Yeah, that's an interesting question because we heard about talent scarcity already for many, many years. But I think it's the first time really that people are seeing the effects of it, and also our clients. They used to get their talents very easily, but that's changing very rapidly. So with that, they're really looking into the contingent space to broaden their flexibility skill and also adapting to the wish of the younger generation that is actually looking for more flexibility, and they're not that much about perm jobs anymore. So that's definitely changing, and that means also the need for cross-border different channels like on-demand platform, freelancer platforms. That's really taking off at the moment, and we're really looking in how we implement that with our clients at the moment.
Thanks, Rashid. And I think you make some really important points around the fact that people themselves are wanting to work on a more flexible basis. So it's how organisations can really widen their access to the talent pool by using all forms of labour in the contingent space. So definitely see that occurring as some key trends.
Yeah, exactly. And I think some of our clients are actually not talking about an employee value proposition, but they're looking at an assignment value proposition because they see that it's all about the job that needs to get done. And it's independent whether that's by a perm or contingent or whatever shape or form. So that's rapidly changing as well.
So it's all about making the job more exciting.
Absolutely, yeah.
So Richard, how can a managed services program help companies better utilise all the different work arrangements available to them today in today's workforce, whether it's freelancers, statement of work, etc.?
Yeah, I think it's all about having a more holistic view on how works need to get done. We used to think always in perm and contingent, and then even not in the most advanced contingent solutions. So I think it's really about that holistic view. So ultimately, it is all about candidates and the experience that clients have with any type of service, whether that's from the internal TA acquisition function or it's from an outsourcing partner like Randstad Sourceright, for example. Because ultimately it all starts with a request for work, and from that request of work it needs to be determined: do I go perm, do I go flex, and what shape and form of flex, and does it need to happen in the country where the request sits? Yeah, you can think about right shoring, offshoring. There's quite a lot around there, but talent acquisition and procurement function need to think about how the work needs to get done in the future, and that asks actually a different approach on looking at work. So I think it all starts with that holistic view on work.
And Richard, how have you really seen then MSP service providers evolve to help organisations better be able to understand how to get the work done?
Yeah, I think there's a crucial role for an MSP to be played because ultimately a lot of these things come together with an MSP because a hiring manager typically has a question, and sometimes even they don't know at that point whether that needs to be a perm job or a contingent job. So I think the MSPs need to upskill to a more talent advisory platform than just MSP who is treating contingents. Regardless whether an MSP also is responsible for an RPO bid or that is done by talent acquisition internally. But it's that upscaling to true talent advisory because it might not be the best solution to go for contingent, whatever shape and form.
So, Rashid, I know that the technology landscape is really evolving also to help organizations meet this changing workforce requirement. So tell me about what kinds of technologies are helping drive contingent workforce strategies and talent engagement today?
Well, for sure, it's still the VMS providers as well. So they definitely develop their tools. So they're doing quite a bit of changes to their technology, which is still, I would say, still the basis of the technology. But then there are so many other applications that need to be considered, from freelancer management systems, like, for example, our own Twago, which is really important when it comes to freelance and independent contractors. There's obviously a huge landscape starting to exist from an on-demand platform, so Workmark as it works. There are quite a few out there which has a specific group of talent that is really interesting for an MSP as well. And so we're looking at how do you connect these type of platforms to our programs. Then beside that, you obviously have the operational efficiency tools like Montage that does interview tooling, but also new technologies like salary boards and the burning glasses, which looks much more to availability in the market, pricing in the market, even to the granularity of cities. So is the talent available and what are those costs? So I think there's a whole landscape of technologies that is now added to technologies like a VMS platform, which used to be the dominating factor of tooling in the MSP space. So yeah, it's quite exciting because there's everyday new technologies existing and created, and we need to see how we all blend that in to be able to serve that holistic view of a client and utilizing all these technologies.
And Rashid, you make an important point that I think one of the foundations will be a data and insights or analytics platform that you're enabled to connect not only supply and demand data to, but also performance of the program to assist with workforce forecasting and modeling of the future. So I think that can really start to see the importance of data within the MSP environment.
Yeah, for sure. And I think Talent Radar is one of the important tools that we use internally. And that, for us, that brings all the data together and it actually produces meaningful data. So where do we steer? And even if you speak about talent advisory, then that becomes even more profoundly important, because otherwise it's very difficult to predict what an outcome needs to be based on a request of a client.
When we really look at what are the risks to organizations if they don't learn how to use the greater availability of flexible resources to them, what do we really think some of these risks are to companies today, Rashid?
Well, I think the most important risk that they have is they will not be able to deliver on their strategy, because I think there's a big underestimation about what talent does for your company. And if you look at some of the recent studies, but also some of the things that came out of our talent trend report, is that even the CEOs and CHROs of companies see that as the motor for, or their engine actually for the realization of their strategy. If you look at some of the companies, they think that in a couple of years' time, 40% of their workforce is contingent, and predominantly in the freelancer and the independent contractor space. So I think the biggest risk for companies is not meeting their strategy, not meeting their targets, and they probably stop innovating if they are not on board with where to find the best talent for a particular assignment, because they bring in knowledge that they not necessarily have within their perm workforce. So it's all about realization, target, strategy, but also money-wise. So
I think it's interesting, Rashid, because we used to always talk about some of the greatest benefits of something like MSP is being able to better manage your risk and your compliance, your process standardization. And, we've really seen that evolution. I think it's based on talent scarcity and the evolving workforce, to that talent is a contributor to business performance, and actually talent availability and access to talent has really increased its level of importance within an organization. So I always like to challenge HR to say, what happens when you're not managing 40% of your talent? Who is managing that for you? You really need to see it as a key talent source today.
No, absolutely. And whether that's in the professional space or in the general staffing space, because imagine in the general staffing, if we were not there helping them to fluctuate with their production needs, then they would either be too expensive in the marketplace and they would not be able to sell their products anymore in the future. But also, if you look in the professional space, there are some really niche profiles that they would be very hard to find for them as a perm employees. You would scale up that knowledge for that particular moment in time. So yeah, absolutely, really important for them to realize their strategies.
So Rashid, many organisations are looking to evolve a holistic strategy, like you mentioned, which really looks at a blend of their contingent and permanent workforce to really look at what is the right type of talent to get work done. So tell me, how can a company successfully transition an MSP into a total talent strategy?
Yeah, there needs to be a lot in place, because I think there's a slight underestimation what it means to go to true total talent management. For one, I think the program needs to be stable. And what I mean is, you roll out your program to the number of countries that are important for the client, but then those programs need to be truly stable, so operational excellence, so to speak. And there also needs to be sort of a maturity. You can't grow a MSP into a talent advisory or total talent management platform if you didn't mature enough. And I think with one of our big healthcare players that we are actually working on realization of that strategy, it turned out to be that there needs to be a lot in place in terms of stability, maturity, but also the acceptance of key stakeholders of that. Because it sounds really great, but you see a lot of companies still not aligned internally between the talent acquisition function and HR function and the procurement function on what total talent management is, how that looks like, and how that needs to be implemented, and more important, who's in control, who's in the lead of that strategy. But to get there, build a proper system, build a proper platform, make sure you utilize the technology in the way it is supposed to be, and optimize as much as possible, because the next step is even more complex, because you need to upskill your operational people to being true advisors. You need to be able to deploy the technology you need, including benchmarking data, client data, and then drive for that strategy. So yeah, it's complex, but I think the true step is if you too fast, then you will not be able to realize it, because either the people are not ready or your systems landscape is not ready yet.
It's a really interesting point, Rashid, because I think when I have looked at a lot of the research around it, is that a lot of organizations are looking to adopt total talent, but their actual readiness that is in place, they're not ready. And I think the most important point around that is lining up your stakeholders and really looking at how you break down what have been quite barriers between HR and procurement and talent to be able to drive this level of strategy forward. So I think you're right, you need systems, you need platforms, and really importantly, you need your stakeholders aligned to getting there.
Yeah, and I think one addition to that is don't try and implement total talent or total talent strategies globally at once at one client. You start where they are most mature, experiment, adopt, change, and then roll it out slowly. Because I think it's in utopia if you look globally, because of maturity in the different parts of the world and the internal alignment with the client. I think I didn't find one client completely globally aligned on the strategy. So I think if you have those together, alignment, and roll it out slowly to those parts that are ready for it, then you have the biggest chance on being successful.
I hear that all the time. It's not something that you can turn on overnight. It's a true journey towards achieving total talent.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Rashid, we're really looking at rapidly evolving our models at Randstad Sourceright to support customers enabled to achieve workforce flexibility and agility. So tell me, how does Randstad Sourceright's approach to MSP provide a business advantage for the companies that we work with?
Yeah, it's a great question, Louise, and I think it's about how we evolve to the models of our clients. So we talked about how these models from total talent advisory look like. And it means that there's a lot to be done. So our operational teams need to get ready to get true talent advisors. And so there's a lot of learning and education on what that means. It means we can't look just from a contingent side. We also need to look at from a more talent acquisition side. On the other hand, it's highly driven by technology to enable our people to be truly talent advisors. And that needs to fit in the landscape of our clients. So that means if you look at Randstad and Randstad Sourceright, because of the magnitude of what we're trying to achieve, that means that we truly need to blend all the brain powers and all the technologies together. So we're using the digital factory, which is a big part of Randstad, driving new technologies and information. We're using talent innovation centers to bring in the technology from a Randstad Sourceright perspective and to bring that all together for clients, achieving that talent strategy to their environment.
And I think Rashid, what's really important is that we can meet customers where they are. And you've talked before in the interview in relation to market as well as customer maturity. And I think it's important that, whether a client is, first adopting an MSP and getting it stabilized, right through to how they're evolving towards total talent, which is based on that integrated talent insights, data, technology and advisory model. It's all about meeting where customers are. So is there anything in addition to that you'd like to add around how we really look at where a customer is positioned?
Yeah, I think if you look at, and then it comes more to market maturity. So one, you have obviously what you said, the client maturity, whether they can accept and adopt, but I see also market maturity. A good example is digital interviewing. So of the likes of the montage, it would be fairly easy to implement that in the US market, the UK market. But when you come to the more EMEA markets, it becomes more difficult because cultures are not adapted to all that technology yet. Some of the clients are still conservative and they're looking their way in technology landscape and how to adopt it. They used to be used to the old models, which is very high touch, meeting people next to them, sitting next to them, speaking to them. And that's a role that Randstad Social needs to play to explain to clients and hiring managers how that technology actually helps and advance them. But again, it needs to be in the pace of the country, in the pace of the culture, and the pace of the companies as well.
And Richard, I think that becomes even more interesting, like you've mentioned, is that some organizations will, they won't be able to find talent on shore. So how do they connect with talent where the talent is and where the talent wants to work from to best speed up their access to what they need to achieve their business strategy? So it's going to be really interesting to see how that continuously evolves.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Rashid, let's end on something really practical for all of our viewers today. What are some practical tips for them to enhance their contingent talent strategies, and what can they do right now?
Yeah, I would recommend if they would do it today and they look at their program. So one is depending obviously of your maturity level in an MSP program, and for your contingent side, I would say look at your supply chain. I think supply chain and supply chain management, which means managing your supplies. I still find a lot of clients out there that they're not really looking into the supply chain yet. And that means supplier performance. How do you upgrade your suppliers so that they understand absolutely your need and push them to go out in the market and find the best talents? I would rapidly look at what other channels are available to me. The on-demand platforms coming really fast. They have some great opportunity from gig workers and other type of business that you outsource very quickly, very fast. And one of the things what I found very interesting is also negotiation strategies. How do you deal with your suppliers? So one is finding them, performing, measuring them, but then there's also how do you negotiate with them? Because there's always that risk if we negotiate too tough, suppliers will not deliver, even in the talent scarcity market. But then still, you want to drive competition, not only for the money, but you also want to drive competition because you want to make sure that they deliver the best quality against the best speed, against the best price. And it's that combination. And if you bring that all together, that also sets a good base to move on to total talent management, because those are some of the fundamentals. So checking your organization, how far are you, how good are you at supply chain management in the true sense of the word, because that sets your next stage to go into talent advisory and make sure you can get to that next level.
Great. Thanks so much for your time today, Rashid. It's a really fast-moving and evolving market when you're looking at contingent talent. So thank you for providing all of your insight, and we look forward to sharing it with our audience across the world. Thank you.
You're welcome.